In science, there are no sacred truths. All
Attune the capture device to the power DVD, and it is attuned. Now I shall adjourn to the back room and find the missing gem. This is 19 minutes long. It says 45, but I'm stopping it after 20.
I'm gonna mute.
What? You're gonna be what?
I'm gonna mute my microphone.
Yes.
Okay.
20 minutes. Yeah. Here we go.
Flush out your kid, you new guy.
To the empirical evidences of the fallacy of the law of gravitation, 4 well-known difficulties of the gravitational theory can be added. A. Gravitation acts in no time. Laplace calculated that in order to keep the solar system together, the gravitational pull must propagate with a velocity at least 50 million times greater than the velocity of light. Something we've heard before. A physical agent requires time to cover distance. Gravitation defies time. B. Matter acts where it is not, or in absentia, through no physical agent. This is a defiance of space. Newton was aware of this difficulty when he wrote in a letter to Bentley that gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body can act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to the other, to another. It is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. Leibniz opposed the theory of gravitation for this very reason. Gravitational force is unchangeable by any and all agents or by any medium through which it passes, always propagating as the inverse square of the distances.
I can't stop the echo. I don't know why it's doing
everything that influences other natural phenomena. De Sitter. This is a defiance of the principles governing other energies.
Might be on the video.
D. Every particle in the universe must be under a tendency to be pulled apart because of the infinite mass in the universe. It is pulled to all sides by all the matter in space.
Right.
So I have to scratch my head. I'm going to have to read that one a couple times. A few additional remarks about the motion of bodies in the universe, which bear upon the theory of gravitation, are added here. 1. The notion of the tangential escape and or inertia of the primary motion of the planets and satellites, being adopted by all cosmogonical theories of post-Newtonian days, led all of them into insurmountable difficulties. The retrograde motion of some satellites is one of these difficulties. 2. The principle of gravitation demands an ultimate balling of all matter in the cosmos. This is not in harmony with spectral observations, which suggest even an expanding universe. An atom differs from the solar system by the fact that it is not gravitation that makes the electrons go around the nucleus, but electricity. B. Russell. Different principles are supposed to govern the motion of the planetary bodies in the macrocosm and microcosm.
There are no islands in space.
Newton explained the principle underlying the motion of the planets and the satellites by the example of a stone thrown horizontally from a mountain with such force that gravitation bends its flight so that it revolves around the earth, coming back to exactly the same place once again to repeat the course of its flight. But he admits it is not to be conceived that mere mechanical causes could give birth to so many regular motions, and invokes an act of providence and providing each satellite with a tangential push of a strength which, together with the pull of the primary, creates an orbit. General Scholium to Book 3 of the Principia. The inertia of the tangential instantaneous push has not exhausted itself in all the eons, despite the tidal friction between a satellite and its primary, or the sun pulling the satellite away from the primary, or the resistance of matter, meteorites, in space, though all these forces act permanently and therefore with acceleration. Newton's gravitational theory is regarded as proved by the action of the tides. But studying the tides, Newton came to the conclusion that the moon has a mass equal to 1/140th of the Earth. Modern calculations based on the theory of gravitation, but not on the action of the tides, ascribe to the moon a mass equal to 1/81 of the Earth's mass. Is that 1/81st? Or my son would say 1/81th of the Earth's mass. The greatest triumph of the theory of gravitation was the discovery of the planet Neptune, the position of which was calculated simultaneously by Adams and Leverrier from the perturbations experienced by Uranus. But in the controversy which ensued concerning the priority in announcing the existence of Neptune, it was stressed that neither of the two scholars was the real discoverer, as both of them calculated very erroneously the distance of Neptune from the orbit. Yet even if the computations were correct, there would be no proof that gravitation and not another energy acts between Uranus and Neptune. The gravitational pull decreases as the square of the distance. Electricity and magnetism act in the same way. Newton was mistaken when he ascribed to magnetism a decrease that follows the cube. Building his system of the world, Newton put before his readers rules of reasoning and philosophy. The first rule is, we are to admit no more causes of natural things than such as are both true and sufficient to explain their appearances. Rule 2 is, therefore, to the same natural effects we must, as far as possible, assign the same causes. Thorough theoretical and experimental investigations will be necessary to build a new theory in place of now accepted theory of gravitation. For the present, we shall offer only general suggestions. 1. Attraction between two natural atoms. Each atom is made of positive and negative electricity, and though neutral as a whole, may form an electric dipole when subjected to an electric force. Thus, in the theory presented here, this attraction is not due to inherent gravitational properties of mass, but instead to the well-known electrical properties of attraction. Two dipoles arrange themselves so that the attraction is stronger than their mutual repulsion. Inertia, or the passive property of matter, the equality of active and passive, or gravitational and inertial mass, was in Newton's system a most remarkable accidental coincidence, something like a miracle. Newton himself decidedly felt it as such. W. de Sitter. In Einstein's explanation, inertia and gravitation are not two different properties, but one and the same property viewed from different points in space. Accordingly to his illustration, a man in an elevator that is being continuously pulled up by a rope invisible to the man will feel his feet pressed against the bottom of the elevator and will think that he gravitates toward the floor. But someone else observing the situation from the outside in space will judge that there is a fact of inertia the pulled elevator has to overcome, the inertia of the man standing on its floor. If the man in the elevator lets an object fall from his hand, it will approach the floor at an accelerated speed because the elevator is being continuously pulled upward. To the observer on the outside, it rises with acceleration. By this illustration, Einstein tried to explain the equivalence of inertia and gravitation. But it is impossible to adopt this explanation for the gravitational effect of the globe. The observer from outside cannot perceive the globe as moving simultaneously in all directions. Einstein sees the difficulty and says, it is, for instance, impossible to choose a body of reference such that, as judged from it, the gravitational field of the Earth in its entirety vanishes. In our explanation, the active property is due to one kind of charge in the atom, the attracted charge, the passive property to the opposite charge, which is repelled. Both exist in equal quantities in a neutral atom. This explains the equality of the gravitating and inertial properties of matter. However, the charges must arrange themselves in such a manner that attraction precedes the attracting force, overcomes the repelling force. Because the attracting poles of the dipoles are closer to one another than the repelling pole. When the repelling poles are closer, the atoms, or their combinations in molecules, repel each other, as is the case with gases. A charged body attracts more strongly than a neutral body because of the presence of free electrons. In dipoles, the charges rearrange themselves only a little, but free electrons can rearrange themselves much more. 3. Attraction of bodies toward the Earth. The ionosphere is strongly charged with respect to the neutral Earth. A potential difference of 100 volts per meter altitude exists near the ground, or a difference in potentials which forces the current through the electric lamps. Does any relation exist between the difference in voltage in the lower atmosphere and the difference in weight? At the ceiling of a room 3 meters high, a kilogram weighs about 1 milligram less than at the floor. Well, there's our dinosaurs and 2/3 gravity change right there. Just another confirmation. With the altitude, a voltage difference per meter is not the same as near the ground, but it accumulates to a high figure. Between a point 10 miles high and the surface of the Earth, there is an electrical pressure difference of about 150,000 volts. Let me read that again. Between a point 10 miles high and the surface of the Earth, there is an electrical pressure difference of about 150,000 volts. Neutral bodies consist of both positive and negative charges. Neutral atoms form dipoles along the lines of force of the electric field, with poles turned toward the Earth and the ionosphere. Is the fall of objects due to their dipole attraction and to their movement in an electrical field as dipoles? The proximity to the ground gives its action preference over that of the ionosphere, as far as the attracting force is concerned, since the distance between the opposite electric poles of the atomic dipole is much smaller in comparison to its total distance from the ionosphere than from the ground. This means, however, that when the objects reach a certain altitude, they would be attracted upward. Meteorites, repelled into space, are apparently charged identically with the upper layer of the ionosphere. This part of the theory concerning falling bodies requires experimentation and exact calculation. It is probable that, besides carrying a charge, the ground turns all of its atoms as dipoles toward the ionosphere. 4. In contrast to electric and magnetic fields, the gravitational field exhibits a most remarkable property, which is of fundamental importance. Bodies which are moving under the sole influence of a gravitational field receive an acceleration which does not in the least depend either on the material or the physical state of the body. Einstein. This law is supposed to hold with great accuracy. The velocity of the fall is generally explored with the help of a pendulum. It appears to us that a charged object must fall with a different velocity than a neutral object. This is generally denied, but the denial is based on the observation that there is no difference in the number of swings of a pendulum in a unit of time, in the case where a charged or neutral bob is used. This method may produce inaccurate results. In an accurate method, the falling time and the time of ascent of the pendulum must be measured separately. In the case of a charged body, the increase in the velocity of descent of the pendulum may be accompanied by a decrease in the velocity of ascent, and thus the number of swings in a unit of time would remain the same for charged and non-charged bobs. There are a few more paragraphs here, but it's basically dealing with the same thing. We're going to move right ahead to 3. Attraction, repulsion, and electromagnetic circumduction act in the solar system. Sun, planets, satellite, comets are charged bodies. As charged bodies, they are interdependent. The solar surface is charged negatively in relation to the charge of the Earth, as the spectral lines with the dominant red line in the spectrum of hydrogen reveal. The Sun carries a charge and rotates. It is an electromagnet. The spots of the Sun are magnetic, and the filaments of hydrogen on the Sun's surface arrange themselves as iron particles in a magnetic field. Besides the spots, the Sun as a whole is a magnet. The form of the corona and the motion of the prominences suggest that it is a magnet, wrote G.E. Hale when he undertook to detect the Zeeman effect. The Zeeman effect proved to be most pronounced at 45 degrees in both hemispheres of the Sun. Hale found the displacement of lines decreases to 0 at the equator and near the poles of rotation, and also that a first approximate value for the vertical intensity of the Sun's general field at the poles is 50 Gausses. Thus, it is confirmed that the Sun is a magnet. But the magnetic field was found not to be strong. This result is questioned here. The lines of the corona suggested that the existence of a magnetic field on the Sun to the scholar who discovered it, but the form of the corona suggests a powerful magnetic field. Visible coronal bands and streamers reach a distance equal to 10 and more diameters from the disk of the Sun. Mercury is only 40 solar diameters from the Sun, and Earth 108 solar diameters. More recent investigation by Stevens, who photographed the streamers from 25,000 feet, disclosed a globular corona more extensive than any known from ground photographs. Disturbances in filaments and vortices of the Sun affect the ionosphere of the Earth and prove the existence of a powerful charge on the Sun. Rotating at the speed of the solar rotation, a strong charge must produce a strong magnetic field.
Of course, it's the old one. Of course it is. Can't win. 1 sec. On February 10, 1773, Pierre Simon Laplace, a 23 years old scientist, read before the Academy of Sciences
in Paris a paper in which, on the basis of Newtonian theory of gravitation, he announced the invariability of planetary mean motions. This was the first step in establishment of the stability of the solar system. Says the Encyclopedia Britannica, 14th edition, a mathematical genius, Laplace showed in a mathematical analysis that the planets must proceed on their paths to the end of time, and that accordingly they have been on their present orbits since the very beginning. In a series of papers, Laplace and Lagrange, another mathematical genius whose ideas went in the same direction, vied in a complete substantiation of this thesis of invariability of the planetary mean motions. No planet could ever have joined the family of the planets. No planet has ever changed its orbit. It was a work of stability in the cosmos, carried through to the very eve of the French Revolution. In 1796, in a note to the Exposition du Système du Monde, Laplace offered his idea of the origin of the solar system. It was a large nebula. It rotated, and because of the gravitation of the mass to its center, a sun formed itself in the middle and condensed. The outer parts of the nebula broke into rings, and the rings rolled themselves into globes, the planets. He insisted that there could be no accident in the fact that the sun, all known planets, all known satellites, roll in the same direction, counterclockwise. Being a master of the theory of probabilities, he concluded that there are 4 billion chances against 1 that this plan is not the result of chance. Even the best known historical events have not been authenticated at the same ratio of 4 billion against 1. By today, we've known that Laplace was wrong with the discovery of the first retrograde satellite. And today, more than 10 retrograde satellites are known. The rotation of Venus is also retrograde, as is that of Uranus, discovered in 1781. The 4 billions against 1 odds becomes 0 against 1. There may still be a common plan in the arrangement, but this plan was no more evident. Nevertheless, the estimate of the 23-year-old Laplace that the planetary orbits are eternal became the principal statute of faith, or the supreme dogma of the astronomers of the 19th and 20th centuries. On it is based the astronomy of today. According to Laplace, gravitation, in order to keep this system together, must propagate with a velocity that, compared to the velocity of light, is at least 50 million times greater. And since light propagates with the velocity of 300,000 kilometers a second, 186,000 miles, the velocity with which gravitation must propagate in order that the solar system should not fall apart must be infinite or instantaneous. This last postulate of Laplace was sometimes silently dropped out of his theory, and the permanency of the celestial orbits remained and served as alpha and omega of all subsequent thinking. In 1633, René Descartes, philosopher and geometer, then 37 years old, was preparing for publication a great work.
Le monde est le trait de l'homme.
When at the end of November of that year the news arrived at Deventer, Holland, where Descartes was staying at the time, of the persecution to which Galileo had been subjected in Rome. Not desirous of coming into conflict with the Catholic Church, Descartes decided against the publication of his work, and being also a practicing Catholic, he wrote to the mathematician Marin Mersenne. This condemnation of Galileo came as so much of a surprise to me that I have all but made up my mind to burn my papers in their entirety, or at least not to allow them to be seen by anyone. For I could not imagine that Galileo would have been prosecuted for anything else, but that, no doubt, he must have wanted to establish the motion of the earth, which I am well aware was at one time censored by several cardinals. But I thought I heard it said that even afterwards the public teaching of it was not discontinued, not even in Rome. But I confess that if I was wrong, so are the entire foundations of my philosophy. For it, i.e. the motion of the earth, is demonstrated by them, evidently, and it is so closely tied to all parts of my treatise that I would not know how to separate it without making the rest effective. But since I would not for anything in the world want that from me should come so much as a word disapproved of by the Church, I would prefer to suppress it rather than let it appear mangled. I beg you also to send me whatever you know about the Galileo affair. Descartes never again picked up the manuscript, and it was not published until decades later, long after his death. Instead, in 1644, Descartes published his Principes de la Philosophie, in which he developed his theory of the mechanism of planetary motions. The universe is filled with subtle matter, some kind of effluvium, not much different from the ether of later authors. The sun, by its rotation, causes this effluvium to be concentrated in vortices that carry the planets around the sun on their orbits. Whatever was the manner whereby matter was first set in motion, the vortices into which it is divided must now be so disposed that each turns in the direction in which it is easiest for it to continue its movement, for in accordance with the laws of nature, a moving body is easily deflected by meeting another body. Descartes' theory of vortices soon became the accepted teaching about the mechanism of the solar system. Descartes himself proved, however, that philosophers who solve the mysteries of the world can commit fatal mistakes. After some deliberation and wavering, he accepted the insistent invitations to teach philosophy to Queen Christina of Sweden. As so many shallow persons, she was flattered to have the most famous philosopher of Europe at her feet, and actually at her beside, for she ordered him to appear every morning at 5 to start the lesson. He cared for nothing more in his habits, as for a late rising, the cold nights and early morning hours in the winter of Sweden broke his health, and 4 months after arrival in Sweden he died there from pneumonia. Cartesian philosophy finds many followers until today, but his scheme of things celestial has long been regarded as discredited. This teaching prevailed on the continent in his lifetime, and still in the lifetime of Newton, but not much longer. Newton. In the year Galileo died, 1642, Newton was born. At the age of 24, when a plague was ravaging the cities of England, he secluded himself at his parental home in Lincolnshire, and there contemplated the motions of the heavenly body. This work of his was put aside for 2 decades. It was not until the year 1686 that the first edition of Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica was published. A testimony is preserved that says the figures Newton had of the size of the earth, and thus the terrestrial radius, were rather inexact. Consequently, his computations of the Earth's gravitational pull did not agree with the observations. And it is said when the French savant J. Picard, upon measuring the meridian in Lapland, came to the correct result, that Newton became confident of his formula for inertia and gravitation. Life claims Hooke, Flamsteed, Leibniz, light core, space empty. How does gravitation act? Nature of gravitation, law of simplicity. When explaining his theory of celestial mechanics, Newton used the following example. A projectile, a stone, is thrown horizontally from the top of a high mountain. Because of its weight, it is forced out of the rectilinear path which by the initial projection alone it should have pursued, and made to describe a curved line in the air, and through that crooked way is at last brought down to the ground, and the greater the velocity is with which it is projected, the further it goes before it falls to the earth. We may therefore suppose the velocity to be increased, that it would describe an arc of 1, 2, 5, 10, 100, 1,000 miles, before it arrived at the earth, till at last, exceeding the limits of the earth, it should pass into space without touching it. At a very definite curve, the result of a very precise and definite velocity of projection, the stone would follow the circumference of the earth, and return to the mountain from which it was projected, without falling to the ground or flying off into space. For the sake of this example, let us suppose that there is no air between the earth, or at least that it is endowed with little or no power of resisting, and that only the weight of the projectile causes it to bend its path. One can observe that these figures differ by 7%, and that therefore complete correspondence is an exaggeration. There are other much more close correspondences involving our moon, and they still belong in the domain of coincidences. The moon, for instance, is placed so on its orbit that it appears nearly the same size as the sun, and actually, during the full eclipses, the moon chances so to cover the sun that only the solar corona is seen over the dark zone of the moon. Also, the already mentioned fact the moon's mean distance is very nearly equal to 60 terrestrial semi-diameters, the number of seconds in a minute, or the fact that light travels 186,000 miles a second and the diameter off. At age 50, when the biological process of involution generally sets in a man, Newton became ill and depressed. The excessive exploitation of his brain, his unrelenting search for answers to nature's unsolved problems, undermined and disturbed the mental balance of the genius. When Newton was 45 years old, his Principia was published. Then he worked on optics. The story goes that he left his manuscript on the table close to a burning candle and went out of the room to look at a procession. A pet overturned a candle and the manuscript burned. This misfortune started his depression. It is questionable whether this is a true story. In a young man, mental depression usually sets in when the person faces a big task and is afraid to fail. In the second half of life, a person becomes depressed, mostly as a result of slighting and humiliation. It would be wrong to think that a person who is great is protected by his greatness from the feeling of slighting and humiliation. Newton's
Like
experience
his
with Hooke, with
story.
Leibniz, and
He
with
probably
Flamsteed
ripped
could
off
have
Rooker
been
like
the
he
real
said
cause.
he
It is possible, and even probable, that if Newton lived in our time, he would not support his theory of mechanical movement of the planets. At the end of the Principias, he wrote, "But hitherto I have not been able to discover the cause of those properties of gravity from phenomena. And I have no hypothesis, for whatever is not deduced from the phenomena is to be called an hypothesis, and hypotheses, whether metaphysical or physical, whether of occult qualities of mechanical, have no place in experimental philosophy." Thus, he felt that he left his theory of gravitation unjustified, because he was unable to explain the cause of gravity and the nature of this phenomenon. However, he must have some intuitive inkling of where to look for the explanation for explaining gravitation, because on the same page, which is at the end of the third book of Principia, he wrote,
Y'all hear that? If you don't have any proof at all, it is to be called an hypothesis. Only after a certain amount of proof makes it, vindicates it, can it be called a theory.
François-Marie Arouet de Voltaire, 1694 to 1778, wit, liberal and freethinker, at the age of 31 was insulted by Chevalier de Rohan and answered with a biting sarcasm. A little time later, when dining at the table of the Duc de Sully, he was asked to step out and was beaten by the servants of Rohan, who looked on. For 3 months, Voltaire postponed to challenge Rohan to a duel. Then he challenged, but on the morning set for the encounter, he was arrested and put into the Bastille. After 2 weeks there, he, in accordance with his own wish, was deported to England. Then
buddy,
he stayed for
come
3
on here.
years,
Come
from
on here, I'll tell you
1726 to 1729.
When Voltaire returned to France, he was a self-appointed agent of all things British. In the world of thought, the supreme point of difference between the French and the British lay in the conflict of views of Descartes and Newton on the mechanics of the universe. Descartes was long dead, and Newton died in 1727. During Voltaire's stay in England, the French scientists in general kept to
It's very possible they're the same spirit, all of them. Because you notice when one dies, the other one's born that day. That's freaky. I'm just saying, it's possible.
teaching of Descartes about the vortices that compel the planets to follow their paths. The British scientists adopted the Newtonian teaching of universal gravitation, and the debate was going on upon Voltaire's return to France. In the years that Voltaire spent at Syrie as a guest of Madame du Châtelet, he wrote, with her assistance, a long treatise on the Newtonian system of the world. The singular influence Voltaire gained in France, in Germany, and in the rest of Europe was responsible for the early acceptance of the Newtonian system and the rejection of the Cartesian. Although himself no mathematician, Voltaire set himself up as the supreme judge and decided in favor of Newton and against his companions.
compatriot. He actually stopped the debate. His influence was also responsible, more than anything else, for making the deeply Catholic France into a nation of free thinkers, thus paving the road to the French Revolution in 1789 that took place 11 years after his death. Induction coils. He discovered the principle of the rotary magnetic field, upon which transmission of power from the Niagara Falls and other waterfalls and dams is carried on. A regal recluse, he despised the short-seeing men of science. Many of his pioneer inventions he carried with him to his grave, but he believed in the destiny of man, who, in his words, searches, discovers, and invents, designs, and constructs, and covers with monuments of beauty, grandeur, and awe the star of his birth. This teaches us that not only have the contemporaries of a revolutionary idea in science repeatedly rejected the idea, but also that a rejection of such an idea, even by the best qualified men in the field in generation of the revolutionary, and often still following generations, has occurred not once or twice, but many times. Archimedes rejected the heliocentric system of Aristarchus. Brahe rejected the system of Copernicus, and Galileo was deaf and blind to the discoveries of Kepler. Just as Edison warned against the alternating current developed by Tesla, and who was more competent to judge than Archimedes, in his time Brahe in his, Galileo in his, and Edison in his. Electrical World and Engineer, May 5, 1904. See also Century, June 1900, quoted from J.J. O'Neill, The Prodigal Genius. Life of Nikola Tesla, 1944, page 181. Tesla was in fact a Serb who was born in the Croatian village of Smiljane in the Lika region, which at the time was part of the Austrian monarchy. His father was an Orthodox priest, ed. A lot of people distance themselves from Tesla, and I don't know why. Mostly I'm referring to mainstream science. He doesn't even garner a page in the history books for academia. I just think that's sad. If you said to me right now, name one true genius, It's a
I would
crime.
have to say Nikola Tesla. And he was the toast of the town for many years, until one day a young guy named Einstein just showed up out of nowhere. With his relativity, everything changed. Turns out that Edison wasn't entirely wrong. Even though his whole program was based on propaganda, we have EMF waves today. Judging by that, what he's saying is there has always been a controversy in science, and there probably always will be.
There shouldn't be, though, because people invest themselves in their theory. They fall in love with it. And then they don't want to admit when they're wrong.
And Seneca. Cicero, in the last century before the present era, the statesman and philosopher of Republican Rome, declared the stars to be gods, the divinity of the planets, he explained, by their occupying the sublime positions and by their following unerringly their paths. Since the stars came into existence in the ether, it is reasonable that they possess sensation and intelligence, and from this it follows that the stars are to be reckoned as gods. For it may be observed that the inhabitants of those countries in which the air is pure and rarefied have keener wits and greater powers of understanding than persons who live in a dense and heavy climate. It is therefore likely that the stars possess surpassing intelligence, since they inhabit the ethereal region of the world. Again, the consequences and intelligence of the stars is most clearly evinced by their order and regularity.
The stars move on their own free will and because of their intelligence and divinity.
Not yet could it be said
That some stronger force compels the heavenly bodies to travel in a manner that is contrary to its nature, for what stronger force could there be?
It remains, therefore, that the motion of the heavenly bodies is voluntary. Therefore,
The existence of the gods are so manifest that I can scarcely deem one who denies it of sound mind.
this dogmatic thinking, changing the statute of faith but not the mode of thinking, existed in all ages. In the Rome of Cicero and Caesar, in the Rome of the Catholic Church, in modern observatory, the categorical manner in which the dissidents are castigated, though it said castrated, are castigated as being of unsound and vicious mind, can be seen again in the burning of Giordano Bruno, in the compelling of Galileo to recant on his knees, in the coercing of the publisher of Worlds in Collision to give up the publication. The notion expressed by Cicero that the planets are divine bodies endowed with divine intelligence was deduced not from the fact of their occupying the eponeeringly. These attributes were only called upon to prove the existing idea of planets and stars being gods, and the source of this belief, deep-rooted and widespread, was in natural phenomena and extraordinary events of the past that grew dimmer with every passing generation. Pliny, the Roman naturalist of the 1st century, knew to tell of interplanetary discharge. Heavenly fire is spit forth by the planet as crackling charcoal flies from a burning log. Interplanetary thunderbolts, according to him, have been caused in the past by each of the 3 upper planets, Mars, Mercury, and Saturn. Seneca, the contemporary of Pliny, mentor of Nero and philosopher, was no mathematician and no astronomer. However, he rose to the clearer concept of comets as members of the planetary system. The prevailing view was that of Aristotle, according to whom the comets are exaltations of the Earth in sublunar space, something of the nature of rainbows. Seneca regards them as bodies akin to planets, not yet planets, on very elongated orbits, and he knows that Chaldeans have determined their orbits. Polyaenus of Mendes asserts that comets are placed by the Chaldeans among the number of the wandering stars, i.e. planets, and that their orbits have been determined. He knows that comets are seen only when they come close to the sun, or when they reach the lowest portion of their course. He opposes the view that the comets are unsubstantial bodies. The argument is brought forward that the sight can penetrate through comets and see the stars behind. Seneca answers that this is the case with the tails of the comets, not with their heads, through which one cannot see. He knows the view expounded by Artemidorus that the 5 planets are not the only stars with erratic courses, but merely the only ones of the class that have been observed. But innumerable others revolve in secret, unknown to us, either by the faintness of their light or the situation of their orbit being such that they become visible only while they reach its extremities. The day will yet come, wrote Seneca in his treatise De Cometis, when the progress of research through the long ages will reveal to sight the mysteries of nature that are now concealed. A single lifetime, though it were wholly devoted to the study of the sky, does not suffice for the investigation of problems of such complexity, and then we never make a fair division of the few brief years of life as between study and vice. It must, therefore, require long successive ages to unfold all. The day will yet come when posterity will be amazed that we remained ignorant of things that will to them seem so plain. The 5 planets are constantly thrusting themselves on our notice. They meet us in all the different quarters of the sky with a positive challenge to our curiosity. The man will come one day who will explain in what regions the comets move, why they diverge so much from the other stars, what is their size and their nature. Many discoveries are reserved for the ages still to be when our memories shall have perished. The world is a poor affair if it does not contain matter for investigation. For the whole world, in every age, nature does not reveal all her secrets at once. We imagine we are initiated in her mysteries. We are, as yet, but hanging around her outer courts. Seneca was compelled to take his own life when accused of plotting against Nero, his pupil. He was born in the same year as Jesus of Nazareth. In less than 300 years, Rome was to become the citadel of the new religion. 3 forces kept science from progressing and brought about
the Dark Ages. The invasion of the hordes coming from the east and north, the influence of the church that imposed dogmas and made the human spirit unfree, and the scientific dogma that petrified itself in 1,000-year-long worship of Aristotle, kind of like an ancient Einstein. Though all the years of Middle Ages, with their crusades,
scholasticism,
and Black Death, a strange amalgam of the Christian dogma and Aristotelianism, there's a word, became the credo of the church that regarded the word as finite, the earth as the center of the universe and also immovable. And in the science of astronomy was performed by a distant pupil of Aristotle, Claudius Ptolemy, an Alexandrian astronomer and mathematician, the greatest authority in those sciences for his own age. He lived in the 2nd century, and for all successive centuries, until the time of de Brahe and Kepler, almost 1,500 years later, it was the undisputed dogma. It's pathetic, really. And what's even worse is, it's still like that. Isn't it Rupert Sheldrake? He's recently come out with this hypothesis on the sun being conscious. I wouldn't be one bit surprised if it was. There's nothing new under the sun. The greatest triumph of the celestial mechanics built on gravitation and inertia to the exclusion of any other forces took place in 1846 when Neptune was discovered in the place in the sky calculated by Adams and Leverrier independently of each other. They indicated the direction where the planet would be found with the exactness of 1 degree. They calculated its position by considering the unaccounted for perturbations of Uranus. The story of its discovery is an exciting chapter in the history of astronomy. How the poor student Adams stood in the antechambers of the royal astronomer Airy and was sent away by the valet because Sir Airy was at the table, and how he tried to convince the powerful astronomer of the existence of an 8th planet by sending in his calculations, and how the Frenchman Leverrier was much more fortunate by having performed very similar calculations and by having sent them to the observatory at Potsdam, where the young astronomer Gale, the very first night, at the very first look at the indicated direction, found the new planet. The excited scientific community in Europe was soon plunged into the debate. Who of the two was the true discoverer, prognosticator? Since Gale was the discoverer of the planet, the passions were divided by national line, of course, with the French and British rivalries inflamed, and the royal astronomer had to defend his behavior. There exists quite a literature on the subject. The French insisted on their priority and even named the new planet Leverrier. No ego there. And it took some time before its new name, Neptune, prevailed. Till today, the case is debated, and the pride of Britannia, in any event, deprived of priority of the greatest discoveries, is still not completely healed. The discovery was hailed by the British and the French, and by everyone, as the greatest triumph of the Newtonian theory of gravitation. Uranus showed certain irregularities in its motion, unaccounted for by the gravitational pull of the known planets, and the existence and the position of a planet not yet seen was claimed by Adams and Leverrier alike. This was possibly the best prognostication in the annals of science. But was it really so precise, and was it such a triumph for Newton as always asserted? The so-called Bode's law is the empirically established regularity covered by a simple formula in the mean distances of the planets from the Sun. This regularity can be traced through the planetary system from Mercury to Uranus. The one vacant place between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter was filled in when, in the first night of the 19th century, Ceres, the first of the many asteroids, was discovered by Piazzi-Smythe. Adams and Leverrier alike assumed that the planet, which causes unaccounted perturbations in Uranus, must be located at a distance dictated by Bode's law. And since Saturn and the 6th planet is smaller than Jupiter, the 5th and Uranus, the 7th, is smaller than Saturn. It would be quite logical to expect a planet smaller than Uranus at a distance of 1,750,000,000 miles from its orbit. But next, the calculation showed that the distance of the two planets
when in conjunction, is not 1,750,000,000 miles, but only roughly 1 billion, and with the gravitational attraction decreasing with the distance, as the inverse square of the latter, the mass of the newly discovered planet was grossly overestimated. It was supposed to exert the influence from a much greater distance. It was not enough to show the direction where the planet would be found. It was necessary, in order that the prediction should be true, that the planet would be at the distance predicted, and it was not with Adams nor Leverrier, both of whom committed the same error. Therefore, when the great controversy raged between the supporters of Adams and those of Leverrier, some voices were heard that neither of them was a true prognosticator, and there was no point in the rivalry. To make the distance error of 75% was equal to a threefold overestimate of the mass of a planet. In order to produce the effects from its true distance, Neptune needed to be 3 times as massive as it actually is. Bode's law broke down with the discovery of Neptune, and though Neptune is a little more massive than Uranus, the discrepancy between what was expected and what was found in no manner can be regarded as a rigid confirmation of the Newtonian celestial mechanics, with an exact formula of attraction between the masses at changing distances. The story is not yet at its end, and we need to tell of the discovery of Pluto, the 9th planet, which should have explained what Neptune left unexplained, but failed to do so, either and by a still larger margin. Yet in 1846 the discovery of Neptune was acclaimed, and because of the inertia of the human mind, it is still acclaimed as the greatest proof of the truth of Newtonian celestial laws of gravitational mechanics. Einstein.
Are you falling asleep?
Einstein was born in 1879, the year that Maxwell died. Did you notice a trend there? Or is it me? It was the year when Michelson made the first in a series of his experiments in investigating the velocity of light. Einstein was born in Ulm, the town in which Kepler, his favorite scientist of earlier times, had spent some of the last months of his life before dying in 1630, and Kepler dies where he's born. Double. In high school, the geography teacher declared Einstein to be moronic. In the Zurich Polytechnic, his physics professor, as Einstein told me, once said to him in his college, "The poorest class is of experimental physics, and the poorest people are you." Upon graduation, he was unable to secure a teaching position, and after years of private tutoring of students deficient in mathematics, he was happy to receive the position of a patent examiner in the Bern Patent Office. There he profited in learning to express himself in short and exact terms. At the age of 26 in 1905, he offered the theory of relativity, later called the special or restricted theory of relativity, in distinction from the theory he offered 8 years later, the general theory of relativity. Should I try to put into one single sentence the gist of the theory in 1905, I would do it thus. Space and time regarded as absolute and unvariable entities. Hour is always an hour, and meter is everywhere a meter, were declared to be relative, or changing entities. The speed of light in a vacuum, thought to be a relative quantity, depending on the relative motion of the light source and observer, was declared to be an absolute, unvarying entity. A second is no longer a second for all observers. A second of time is of different duration for observers in motion and at rest, but 186,000 miles per second, whatever miles or whatever seconds, was always true. A mile-long spaceship travels and overtakes our Earth. A light signal is sent in the very middle of the spaceship. For the traveler in the spaceship, the light will arrive simultaneously at both of its ends. For the observer on Earth, assuming he could observe such small differences, the light will come first to the rudder that travels toward the light, and then to the bow that travels away from the light.
Thus, the very notion, simultaneity, was emptied of real content. The theory of Fitzgerald made the matter shorter when crossing through ether and thus masked the change in velocity of light. Einstein, however, made the velocity of light in a vacuum an immutable quantity, or a constant for all observers, in whatever relative motion to the source of light they might be. This is a sentence that can be expressed mathematically, but it is not easy to visualize it by reason. A light leaves its source, whatever object it meets in motion toward or away from the source of the light. The relative velocity of the light and the object is always 186,000 miles per second. Thus, a ray of light speeds from the place of explosion in Coventry with the velocity of 186,000 miles per second to Birmingham, and with the same velocity in the opposite direction toward Rugby. But the two photons of light speeding in opposite directions have a relative speed of 186,000 miles per second, not of 392,000 miles per second. Nothing can be swifter than 186,000 miles per second, the velocity of light. In those early years of Einstein's career, he spent often his time in discussions with another mathematical genius, W. Ritz. The latter could not see that the velocity of the source would not add itself to the velocity of light. In mechanics, a stone thrown by a passenger in a train acquires not only the velocity of the throw, but also that of the train that carries the passenger. Ritz printed a paper to oppose the notion of Einstein. De Sitter answered Ritz and proved his point on an astronomical reasoning. There are double stars so placed in space that one partner eclipses the other at regular intervals. If the velocity of the retreating star would reduce from the speed of light reaching the observer, and the velocity of the advancing star would add to the speed of light emitted by it, the system would appear to deviate from Keplerian motions. Such is definitely not the case. The Earth would be such that the reduction in the speed of light would let the light of one star of the binary arrive to Earth when the star would appear to be in the same place where its companion would appear at the same time. Phrase better.
So it doesn't make any sense. And this is why, in my opinion, so many books have been written about Einstein's theories of relativity, and people still scratch their heads and say, I don't quite get that. And the reason is that fundamentally it doesn't make sense.
The special theory of relativity explained why an ether drift cannot be detected through the experiment with the velocity of light, but it went a step farther and disclaimed any necessity of an ether. This makes a very great difference. Probably the next question after the perennial, is there a God? Does a medium fill all space, or is space between the material mass empty, and not just between material masses? Ether is supposed to fill everything, all space, in all matter, between the electrons and protons of an atom. There is comparatively very wide space, as it is between the sun and the planets. Is the space all filled, or is it empty? I know Velikovsky had a soft spot for Einstein, and that's fine, but he had to know that Einstein was full of doo-doo. He had to know it. It had to be the hardest thing in the world for him to just keep that out of the question of their conversations. According to Velikovsky, at the end of his life, Einstein was very sad and forlorn. He had that warm, cheery smile, but very sad and lonesome eyes. He doesn't really expand on it a lot. He just comments that during the last days of his life, he was a very pious soul and sad and forlorn. For a while in the 50s, they would get together almost daily and argue in German. All of it was the same. Velikovsky trying to get Einstein's approval on his theories, which he did do. But Einstein, he had this life in a bottle. When he woke up, he had to answer mail for 2 to 4 hours. How'd you like to do that? No thanks. And still do all the things that it is that Einstein did. I think Velikovsky was on a mission that He felt with Einstein's clout, if he got him, the world's most recognized scientist, to accept his theories, and Einstein could go public, and then they would have to pay attention to him. It's too bad he died. We'll never know what could have came from that. Could have changed science. Velikovsky knew that. He knew how important it was, and he knew one day in the future someone would dig up his work, and it could change the course of history. That's why we support Velikovsky, because we know he's right, and we know what it could do for us.
Needless to mention, it brings us the electric universe. It gives us a more suitable origin to our solar system. So many things. So many things. Yeah, that was a good little video. I have to admit, I haven't watched that in quite a while. There's another one. I think Doug Voigt and a couple of others. Let's see. I'm going to try to find it. One thing I do ponder a lot, at the basic root of all things, of all matter, even of plasma, electricity, and the ether, one of them has to be the base element. Is it all like with that one guy? Oh my goodness, Alfane said that today's universe are yesterday's ashes of electrical systems. So does that mean that the ether is broken down electricity and plasma and vice versa, or you see what I'm saying? Something has to be the root element. That's what I think about when I think about ether, plasma, and electricity. One of them has to be derived from the other. I think that everything, if the universe is 99% plasma, then everything that we can see, touch, and feel or look at is made of varying thicknesses of plasma. Everything. That's pretty wild when you really start thinking about it and going deep, Okay. It's not the next video. That's a bummer. It should be. Well, I'm going to put something on here, and then I'm going to find it, and I'll be right back. A couple minutes.
Shamanism. Shamanism assumes that everything has a soul. The people, the trees, the animals, the stones, and so on. Everything is connected to everything. Everything is equal with everything and is part of the Great Spirit. Shamanism is of all times and occurs on every continent, but originated in eastern Siberia and Mongolia. The word shaman comes from the Tungus, a Siberian language, and means the aesthetic anthropologist assumes that shamanism originated in the Old Stone Age. It is probably the forerunner of many other religious and magical traditions. Shamanism now. Some Native Americans assume Western people of misusing their rituals and views, and they are quite right, because Western society has little information about their own ancient rituals and the customs of their ancestors. And yet we feel the shamanic attraction, and we want to delve into this. But because the current knowledge of shamanism is based on that of cultures in which this plays a role, it is also logical that our attention mainly focuses on the shamanism of Native Americans. Universal symbolism. Many shamanistic views and utterances use a universal symbolism and are therefore not specifically culture related. Although we are, of course, always connected to the country where we live, so there will be differences for each region and people. What is a shaman? A shaman is a kind of bridge, an intermediary between the people and the spirit world. The shaman also works for people who have problems or are ill. The shaman tries to rebalance disturbed balance. With ritual dances and drums, rattles, and the voice, the shaman evokes a state of consciousness with which he brings himself into a trance, a state of mind that makes it possible to travel through different worlds and to make contact with personal helper spirits. Such a ritual almost always follows a fixed pattern. The shaman dances and sings, often in special clothing, and uses a drum or rattle to get into trance. When the shaman returns from the travels, he reports on his journey to other worlds. There are three worlds, an upper and an underworld, and the world as we know it, the physical world. The latter is called the middle world. In these other worlds, you will find guides, spirits, and ancestors. During his training, a shaman gains the skill to make contact with other worlds, supported by helpers such as totem animals, totem trees, and nature beings. When shamans go into a trance, their soul travels to the upper world to favor the gods, and to the underworld to recover the souls of sick people or to accompany those of deceased people. Many shamans say that they travel to the upper world as a bird. In the past, a shaman within a community had, as it were, the function of priest, healer, and clairvoyant. The modern shaman still assumes that the natural balance between earthly and spiritual matters is disrupted in the case of problems of humans and animals. Shamans are always employed by the community and have different tasks depending on their talent. Women have traditionally been mainly occupied with herbal medicine, taking care of wounds and other medical problems. With an identifiable cause, women have also been active as midwives since time immemorial. Immemorial. In fact, you can perform rituals in any environment. In a forest, but also in your own back garden, even in your bedroom. To bring shamanism into our lives, we do not have to reproduce the rituals of other peoples one by one. Guides can also contact you through your dreams. Look around you at what is now playing a role in your life and ask yourself, what is needed in your immediate environment? Look for the balance and offer support where necessary and desirable. Do not insist on anything. Respect your fellow man, including those with a different opinion.
Reset Act.
Corcapelli. is an ancient character, dancing flute player, whose oldest manifestation is found on prehistoric American rock carvings. The origins of the figure are a mystery, and he figures in many Native American stories, where his age and role vary. He is generally believed to have been a fertility symbol, often depicted as a phallic character, carrying a pouch of seeds or wearing antlers. Kokopelli symbols often appear in the context of rain, pregnancy, prosperity, and marriage. Power animals. In shamanic belief, everything is alive and carries with it power and wisdom. Power animals are an essential component of shamanic practice. They are the helping spirit, which add the power of the shaman and are essential for success in any venture undertaken by the shaman. Shamans believe that everyone has power animals, animal spirits which reside with each individual, adding to their power and protecting them from illness, acting similarly to a guardian angel. Each power animal that you have increases your power so that illnesses or negative energy cannot enter your body. The spirit also lends you the wisdom of its kind. A hawk spirit will give you hawk wisdom and lend you some of the attributes of the hawk. Everyone has a power animal. Everyone is thought to have a few of these guardian power animals from childhood on. Over the course of her or his life, a person may have several, especially I think if you were an animal in a previous life, I would think. If a power animal leaves and one does not come to take its place, the individual is considered by the shaman to be disempowered and therefore vulnerable to illness and bad luck. Power animal retrieval is a healing where the shaman goes to find a new power animal for you. Power animals do not have to be mammals and can be reptiles, insects, or sea creatures. Any living creature can serve as a power animal. Trees can serve as plant and spirit guides. Domesticated animals are generally not considered power animals because they are already in service to human beings. It is possible to have a domesticated animal, but it is more likely to have a wild, untamed animal serve in the capacity of power animal. The gifts that a particular animal is thought to give an individual varies depending on the culture, although there are inconsistencies for certain animals. A particular power animal can come to help you with an issue that is very specific for you. It is important not to lock each animal into the category and be open to the gifts it may be coming to share with you. If you are looking for a book on power animals, Animals Speak by Ted Andrews is very popular.
All right, but if I come back and I can't listen to the video and I want to hear about the spirit things. No, no, I'm listening to this. I've never, I mean, I've known about this, but I've never really actually heard much about it. So, okay, thank you.
A popular website that describes the qualities of various power animals is www.animalspirits.com. Honoring power animals. It is important to honor your power animal. In many Western culture, we are not taught to value animals or the gifts that they add to our lives and the world around us. In shamanic work, the power animal is essential. For a shaman who has no power is not going to have very good results. On a personal level, by honoring your power animal, you let it know that its assistance is appreciated. The spirit of the animal is giving up its mobility in order to spend its time with you and assist you with your life. Also, by honoring the power animal, we make deeper connection with it. Honoring it can be as simple as saying a thank you inside yourself, or getting an object which represents it and putting it where you can see it as you go about your day. Shamanic practice honors and acknowledges the life and wisdom that exists in all things. Everything is believed to have something to teach you, and animals are thought to have a wealth of wisdom and protection to offer you. I know that my son Nathan has taken to sloths and pandas, and I don't know where it came from. He just loves them. Perhaps those are his power animal. I've always been drawn to elephants. Perhaps that's why. For me, I don't know. I've always liked him, though. Finding your power animal. If you would like to find out who your power animal is, consulting a shamanic practitioner is an option. But to discover this on your own, you can ask for a dream and see if anything comes up. You can ask the power animal to show itself to you. And if you start seeing one or another animal frequently, that would be its best way of revealing itself to you. For instance, you are flipping through the channels and see an elk on a nature program. Then later you hear someone talking about going to Elk Grove Village to visit your cousin. You see a sign for an elk's lodge. It is believed that the animal guide can communicate with you by drawing your attention to things around you, and a repetition such as that would be a way of communication. I scoff at nothing, because of course some things sound out there, but that's only because I'm not familiar with that. Why do spirits communicate in symbols? Anyone who has done a few shamanic journeys knows that questions are very rarely answered with yes or no answer. You may also visit.
Well, that just reminded me of something. I have never thought of it until just now. I have a friend who had a son who was killed in a car accident. And the day after his funeral, he witnessed a series of symbols that came up on his wall and stayed there for a long enough time for him to record them. And then they disappeared and others, like 5 sets. He never figured it out. But he just said the dead talking symbols. So that made me put that together. It's crazy. Okay, sorry.
That is crazy. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it just came from 2 different places,
I mean, I would have found somebody to help me.
Yeah. Well,
symbols.
they were like geometrically shaped too, and they only happened for one day. The day after his funeral, they never appeared again, and it was in his room too.
That is creepy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he still keeps his rooms the same way it was.
No way. I mean, I would spend every waking moment to find out what those symbols meant.
Oh, I know. He just kind of blew it off. He's like,
They were for him, right? They had to have been.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh my God.
Son's trying to communicate with him from the other side. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about 10 years ago. He's like, I don't know. It's still written down somewhere. I'll find out what they mean one day. He didn't seem to be in a hurry, but just wait.
Something important, like here's your lottery numbers.
Yeah, I think that when it happened, it just destroyed him in the inside. And now he tends to want to try to be like, I don't know, reserved, I guess. I don't know. It's the best way I can put it. It's not that he doesn't care. It's that he got hurt bad. Yeah.
He's guarding himself. Man.
Yes, he's guarded. There you go. That's what I was looking for. You want to finish this? It's 14 minutes to go.
Yeah, I do.
And find that the information they give you is frustrating or doesn't seem to be clear. Why do journeys get communicated in stories and symbols? The information that comes on a shamanic journey is almost always trying to convey something deeper that can be put into words. Words can be rather limited in what they can convey, and yes or no answers do not often convey much depth of understanding or about truth. If you take a moment to think about word meaning, you can see what I mean. For instance, what does it mean when someone says they are sad? How much is it? How strong? Is it light or heavy? Is it passing through in the moment? A person would have to use a bunch of words if they wanted to convey exactly in which way they are feeling sad. Many of the words we use have this limitation, and the purpose of a journey is not just to answer a question. There's a deeper reality to any question you pose. Why you are having trouble finding a job right now? What would you need in order to move forward? Even questions of should I or should I not do this thing are tied to more than one aspect of your life, your being and your history. So when you get an answer, it is in the form of a story or a metaphor, or even a sensation or a smell. It is meant to convey something. The stories and metaphors are usually not literal.
I agree
When you
with
ask
that.
a question in a journey, the purpose of the answer is not only to give you a deeper understanding, but it is also meant to shift you into a new direction. Sometimes you get an answer that makes no sense to you, and one day what it means becomes clear. Sometimes the answer may never be clear to you. The answer may not need to be clear. That is, because a journey answer is meant to speak to you on many levels. Some of these are levels that you may not be conscious of. Your subconscious is aware of a bunch of stuff that you never think out loud. For instance, many of us have had that moment where we said, I knew there was something wrong with that person. Maybe it was a boyfriend or a girlfriend, neighbor, or business associate. I'm not talking about instances of hindsight, but times where you realize only after the fact that you knew all along that there was something wrong with that person, that you kept telling yourself you could trust. The way I think of it is that you did know, but you didn't know out loud. You weren't fully conscious of knowing, and therefore your knowing was more like a whisper. I get it all the time. I just assume it's intuition. So when you get a symbol, this includes a story, sensation, a metaphor, or a song. And it speaks to this deeper part of yourself. This part of you knows what the symbol means in a quiet way. Once that part of you receives the information, shifts can occur at this deeper level. You didn't know that the lion answered your question, but you begin to start considering bold ways to approach your problem. The rain and the somber field you saw in your journey did not seem related to the question, but a few days or a week down the road, a forgotten memory comes back to you and gives you information on why you're stuck right now. The field and the rain, conveying a feeling, and a deeper part of yourself found that related memory and brought it back into your awareness. I'm always drawn to the rain. That's something about it. I can't really explain it, but I love rainstorms. Shamanic answers are meant to penetrate your being and to be penetrated by you as you work to understand them. In the process, you may or may not be able to see how changes are occurring in your life. Some people keep a journal of their journeys and then go back later to reread them later. I have heard people talk about something they've journeyed on becoming clear later, or being able to see that each journey plugged into a greater picture conveyed over time. There's no telling what a journey answer's ultimate purpose is. Even a yes or no answer is likely deeper than you think. I used to journey and ask questions like, are you really sure I should be a healer? I would get the answer, no. And in pause, I'd feel insecure and think, that can't be right. Then the second part of the answer would come, I know, you should be a healer. I tend to get this answer most often when I already knew the answer to my question and was only asking out of insecurity. This particular way of answering my question evoked my own knowing, my true knowledge of the answer. A symbol, a story, a scent, or a feeling in a journey is meant to cut through, reach into and beyond our everyday understanding. Answers are not meant to be as easy as a grab-and-go sandwich or to address what is purely mental, as say, understanding how gravity works. The spirits or images that come to answer your questions have a rather reaching goal than you getting a factual piece of information. Somehow, the answers fit into the totality of your life and your needs. what could be healed for you, and what you have the possibility to create. Perhaps, in the end, people who stay with the shamanic journey are those who are looking for deeper changes. It's perfectly okay if this doesn't suit what you want or need, but it might be worth giving it a try. The efficiency of shamanic work is only ever judged on the results, and sometimes the results of journeys can only be seen or understood over time. Quite a bit more here, but I think I'll stop now on this. All right, a little bit more. Protecting yourself from negative energy. One of the best ways to protect yourself from negative energy is to make sure you are filled with good energy yourself. However, the stress of our lives can mean that we aren't always as filled with our own energy as we might like. Sometimes protecting yourself is needed to make sure you don't take on negative energy. Also, new shamanic healers may be interacting and calling energies that they hadn't been used to dealing with. They can need protection while they are learning how to manage these energies. What is negative energy? Negative energy is not bad energy. Rather, it is something that is not helping to make you healthier, or it is weighing you down in some way. Your own stress and worry can be stored in your body as negative energy. And I think scientifically they have proven that stress affects your DNA. Once the stress is stored in a part of your body, it can cause a weakness, where that can lead to an illness. As for sources of negative energy outside of you, these can come from a variety of sources. Other people's emotions are the most common source. Spending time in place where people are stressed out can cause you to absorb some of that energy. People who are envious of you can unconsciously send energy to you that is not helpful. Someone gets angry in traffic, and they can send anger at you. Sometimes an environment will be filled with negative energy. In some cases, the energy simply might not be compatible with you. For instance, some people feel drained by the busy bustle of a city, where someone else might feel energized by it. There are some places that just feel better than others. When you are in a place that is not compatible with your energy, you can feel drained. Energy protection is a way for you to prevent taking in negative energy from others or from your environment. Energy is meant to change forms constantly. You see this best in young children, who can be sad one minute, but joyful the next. When energy gets stuck in one form rather than keep changing as it's meant to, that is when you can have difficulties with a given energy. Places of great suffering or grief can have a heavy energy that got stored in that place. This does not mean that the place is a bad place, just that the energy never got transformed. It is stuck in one form and isn't flowing and changing as it is meant to. Shamans are trained how to transform energy from one state into a more positive one. They use this ability to change energy within themselves and clear the energies in other people and spaces or environments. However, many people don't know how to do this and may be in need of learning how to protect themselves from negative energy. Ways of protecting yourself. Visualization. Sometimes visualization is all you need. It's a proven fact. I think they did it with people that were playing darts. They had a group of people not imagine anything, and they had another group of people imagine themselves throwing bullseyes. And the people that visualized beforehand were much more successful than the people who weren't. So that is another fact that has been proven. Whether you know it or not, you have an innate ability to protect yourself from the energy that is not helpful or healthy to you. Using a visualization is one of the ways you can engage that ability. Even though you can't remember how to create protection, your body knows. So the visualization sends the message of what you want to do so that your body can do that. Most visualizations involve seeing yourself surrounded by protection of some kind. I do that all the time. My light is gold. Eventually, your visualizations won't be needed anymore as the protection becomes a habit. You don't want to be too heavily protected all the time, though. It's not healthy to be disconnected from your environment. Healthy energy protection should allow you to be more open to the world around you. Visualization that completely block out the energy of your environment should only be used occasionally, such as when you are in an especially negative environment. It's best that what you visualize allows positive energy to enter and leave through the protection. Some visualizations. Blue egg. Visualize a see-through blue egg that allows good energy to come in and out and keeps bad energy out. The egg surrounds you as you go about your day. Mirror. Visualize a mirror that bounces negativity energy back to the sender. This is especially good to use if you have one person that seems to be sending you negative energy all of the time. You can use the mirror for that person only, rather than the heavy protection around you all the time. You see a mirror standing between yourself and that person, and that anything they send at you goes right back to them. Brick wall. Imagine a brick wall is a visualization. Imagining a brick wall is a visualization that you should only use for especially bad environments. It blocks all energy. If you find that you have to use it all the time, such as at work, you may wish to consider other ways of protecting yourself. You may wish to consider ways of protecting your personal space with items as discussed below. You don't want to use a brick wall to become a habit. You don't want using a brick wall to become a habit. Methods. Many of the methods of energy protection involve filling yourself with positive energy. Things like pranic breathing, meditation, tai chi, or any number of methods can put you in a state where you are less likely to take on negative energy. Methods that affect the energy surrounding you can also be effective. Breathing is always a powerful way of managing your own energy and the energy surrounding you. Sound can also be powerful, and something as simple as humming can clear your space near you of negative energy. You can ask a guardian spirit or power animal to put protection around you. They will not do this unless asked, out of respect for your personal space. However, they can offer very powerful protection. Objects or things to use to either keep your space clear of negative energy or to provide yourself protection personally.
Yes, that was good. I haven't seen that in a while. Enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you. That was really interesting.
Oh, you like that?
Yes.
Yeah, I do too. Anything that's a matter of spirit, and there are so many. No matter who it is, there are more things that they have in common than they do have difference. I mean, it's the basic same theme. Be good to other people. Treat everything with respect. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Basically.
Yeah, the golden rule.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yep. And just don't lie, cheat, or steal. And I'm told it'll be okay. I hope so.
But
Oh,
there's always we live in a world where it's gray areas. Everything's a gray area, little white
yes,
box,
I
you know,
know that. Yes, yes.
so convoluted.
And
It's
I
just
hear some of these little ugly rumors, I mean, I don't know if they're anything more than fear porn, but have you heard the one about the aliens who uh, shock us electromagnetically and keep us on Earth because it's a prison planet? Have you?
yep,
You
yep.
have? You've heard that one?
They that's how we yeah, they shock us and then we forget
Mm-hmm.
wipe our
That
minds.
that's a rumor. I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe it.
You
I
know,
mean,
how do we that's the thing. They talk like it's a for sure thing, like they
I
know for
know.
sure. They
Yes,
don't know.
they don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know anything more. And unfortunately for us, we have people that sit around going, "All right, now what can we talk about? What can we make up that will, put its hooks into people?"
I mean, or they take something
That's
that's,
unfortunate.
you know, they just take stuff and they're able to put some kind of a twist on it that
Mm-hmm.
gets people going, looking at it a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got your division, whatever. It's like that with everything, right? So
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but so I just don't because there are so many different ways of looking at like, one thing
Mm-hmm.
it makes it so that we don't know which one is the real way it should be.
No.
I mean, everything can, and when you're looking and searching and trying to study on whatever, and you start finding that you have more questions, and every question, instead of an answer, you get another question,
Yeah.
then that's when that's when I know that they've got, they've things are made that way on purpose so that we never know.
Yeah.
We just
Well,
remember.
that's true. You technically you really can't prove anything
That's right.
beyond
Yeah.
a shadow of a doubt.
And it's weird that we live in this is this is reality. It's like to me it's um uh, the name I would call it would be belief. We're in the reality of belief because really either you believe something
Yes.
or you
Yeah.
do not
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah.
Like,
That's.
do you believe the sun's coming up tomorrow? Well, I don't. You know what I
I
mean? It's like,
I I
you know,
majorly suspect it.
I mean, yeah, yeah. But then there's some people that could be positively for sure that
Hmm.
it's not, or I mean, you can look at, oh my gosh,
Well, I could
it
just
just
call up my friend Andy and ask him where the sun is. He'll tell me it's on the other side of the Earth right now, and then I'll say, okay, well, it'll be here in about 12 hours. Something like that.
uh-huh.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Because when I talk to him, it's weird because I'm at like midnight or whatever time, and he's like 12 hours the next day. You know,
It's trippy, huh?
it is, man. Yeah, it's the
Yeah, but
dateline and all that.
that's because we put numbers on the, you know, we put a number on it, we put a measurement on it.
Hmm.
Um, because really it's all the same time. It's everybody, we're all in the same moment right now. They're not, 12 hours the moment. I mean, it's the time, the clock is what, because but actually we're all doing everything at the same time.
Mm.
Nobody is behind, you can't be, otherwise you would be able to talk to each other or whatever.
Well, I finally got my head wrapped around the whole concept of time, and it was by one simple sentence from Einstein. What is time? Well, Einstein said it. Time is what clocks say, and that's it. The universe don't know
Yeah,
yesterday. They don't know
exactly.
tomorrow. It only knows right now.
And that's all we know is right
Well,
now. That's all
we
we know.
have clocks to give us time, but it's a man-made concept.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, what are we doing? We are moment by moment,
Hmm. Yeah.
you
Now
know.
we do.
And
The universe does seem to be a universe of atrophy. I mean, atrophy. It happens every day. You never see. You never see a sandcastle like. Remember when Brian Cox was showing a castle built with beach sand, and as the wind was blowing, it was slowly crumbling the sandcastle away.
everything goes
But
away.
you never see one assemble. you know,
Right,
and
right.
they call it the arrow of time. And, you know, it's always moving forward. But that doesn't prove that the universe knows there's a time. It just works that way.
I mean, yeah, and time or how, I think it's how if a human or a human like, brain probably would end up using, like their sun or whatever they have, some, whatever's in their sky to
Right.
to know
Right.
like when certain things it's time to do certain things or
Yeah.
whatever. That's how it starts, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, 4 moons from now it's going to get warmer, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean, or whatever. So as
Mm-hmm.
long as your environment is stable,
Yeah.
because can you imagine? I mean,
Yeah. You have to have a moving body that you can see in order to have time.
right. So
Yeah.
like in the Purple Dawn,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have that.
Not
They were
not
just
not at first. No.
no, they were just living in this
Yeah.
wonderful,
Like a
this wonderful,
blur.
wonderful, yeah,
It,
just
a
completely no
timeless
stress,
blur. Yeah.
no stress whatsoever. There couldn't have
Mm-hmm.
been any stress really.
Mm-mm.
I mean, beautiful, the beautiful. I can't even imagine. I try to imagine what it would be like.
Right, you know, and I know of when Ted said that it had to be peaceful for us. It couldn't be like 50-foot long man eating sea creatures in the water. It had to be, no matter where we were, it had to be bright, warm, and safe.
Yes, I totally agree
Hmm.
because I mean, as a whole, aren't most people are trusting
Hmm.
enough in a perfect stranger. They will help someone. I mean, most people will help strangers or whatever. I mean, that's trust. We actually trust. Even people that think they don't trust other people, they actually really do. They have some kind of a thing, and so it's like a carryover. Like sometime way long ago, we we all lived in had no reason not to trust each other, and
Hmm.
because there's enough food for everybody. There was enough everything. There was no um like nobody was starving, and you know what I mean. Everything was always plentiful, and
Hmm.
so we were able to just do things,
Yeah.
like anything you wanted. But I mean, what do you think about uh the what is it called? Apes, the water. Was it
Are
that
you
lady had
talking
that?
about the older lady who came up
that
with the water ape theory?
yeah,
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 yeah.
because of, and she does have a few
Aqua,
points
yeah,
there about our bodies that we don't
absolutely.
we have fat under and what else? The only other animals that have fat
We carry our
are
fat the same as
yeah, and
dolphins.
and we
The only two
and
that do.
yeah, we have fat
Hmm.
under our skin
Yes,
like fishes.
and we sweat. So do fish. Yep.
Yep. And
There's like 100 things. I'm
and there's
face to
so many
face sex. I never forgot that one.
that one. Yeah, that's true. And our skin,
Yeah.
something about our skin.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 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 The sweat glands was it or
is it what? Something about was it when our fingers wrinkle? Something about wrinkling. I forget what it was that she said. There was quite a few points she had. Um,
Yeah, you know, in that video that I made with Ted, two parts to the Ganymede theory that he did with me, I
uh-huh.
did with him, and it's really interesting. And the first video really got a lot of views right away, you know. And
The second one didn't.
well, no, it really didn't. I don't know why, but the first one was banging at first, and I don't really know what it's doing. I haven't looked at it in over a year, but it was doing well.
I think that was the video that the first time I ever heard of him
Well,
was from that video.
he makes some great points. Okay, first of all,
He blew me out. That's like,
No Neanderthal needle has ever been found. You know that? And I say, why is that, Ted? And he goes, because you don't have to sew when you have 6-inch fur. You know,
right.
yeah, you know. I mean, how could they have lost their fur in an ice age? They wouldn't, if there was ever an ice age. But you know, Then
Yes,
also, the Neanderthals had the purple dawn eyes, and humans don't.
that's
And
right. They have large eyes to see in the dark.
yeah, and there's a lot of things to that theory that you can say it's very probable that it could have happened. I'm not saying it did. I'm just saying he has a
I
good
mean,
chance. He has a
when we
very good chance.
we are sensitive to sunlight. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we are very sensitive to it. Like, don't look at it, and our with the radiation from it, our bodies
Mm-hmm.
can't handle it,
Yeah.
which is really strange if you think about it. If this is a place that we are, you know, created in and from, we
Yeah.
should everyone should completely get along with the sun, no problem.
Right.
But
Yeah. Right. But
yeah, so
even Lloyd Pye brings up that we are not great apes. We don't have the same rib cage. We don't have the same shoulders. We don't have the same neck. We don't have. They don't
feet,
have vocal cords. It just goes on and on.
yeah.
Their eyes and foreheads, and it's just way different. You know,
When he talks about, well, what's her name?
Elaine Morgan.
No,
The,
the no
oh,
the big, or the Sasquatch, or whatever
oh
they
yeah,
call him,
yeah, yeah.
that they
Bigfoot. Yeah.
captured,
Hmm.
that people in Russia,
Yeah.
they captured her and they made her a slave in their town.
Oh,
That's
that's
terrible.
terrible, isn't it?
And then the men used to use her,
Oh,
that's
how
disgusting.
sick.
She
It's
kept
just
having kids,
poor
and she
thing.
kept killing them in the freezing water. It's like, what?
I know,
But then she
man.
did have, then she did that when I found out,
That
then he was,
story broke my
I
heart.
I was telling you about that he actually had a picture of the sun, what
Oh,
this
and yeah, they say
happened
they're
to him
really,
before.
really not very good looking at all.
Oh no, he's he's
Uh,
not good looking. That
yeah,
he wasn't stupid though. I
no,
mean,
I guess they could talk.
well, yeah, because she. So I guess how close are I mean, we're closely related to enough that we could actually, you know, have children with them.
Yeah, that's wild, man. That is the whole thing is just wild. You sure it wasn't just like maybe an ugly Russian woman? Because they do got some homely looking women over there.
Yeah,
They look like
with a
Quasimodo.
unibrow and
Yeah,
yes, a big old woman.
like a 40-pound purse.
And grew up in who was like maybe abandoned at childhood and just grew up in the woods by herself. You know what I
You
mean?
remember Ruth Buzzy on Laugh-In? And she always hit everybody with her purse.
Yes.
Yeah, someone like that. I got one more video to watch here. This is
What is this one about?
it's about the scientists. It's the last one. We showed all the others, with Voltaire and all. This one's Velikovsky, Tesla, Wolf, Vogt, Quasars, and Comments. Happy New Year.
Oh,
Let's check it out.
okay.
See if I have any subscribers that are still here.
There's a couple. There's 29 people actually.
That's cool. That's cool. That's about right for this time. But I am going to log in not too long from now because I am tired.
I can tell. I can hear it.
Let's watch a little bit.
Permanent armaments.
Whoops.
The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office.
I must admit, however, that in searching for the causes of the great upheavals of the past, and in considering their effects, I became skeptical of the great theories concerning celestial motions that were formulated when the historical facts described here were not all known to science. The subject deserves to be discussed in detail and quantitatively. All that I would venture to say at this time and in this place is the following. The accepted celestial mechanics, notwithstanding the many calculations that have been carried out to many decimal places or verified by celestial motions, stands only if the sun, the source of light and warmth and other radiation produced by fusion and fission of atoms, is as a whole an electrical neutral body, and also if the planets in their usual orbits are neutral bodies. Fundamental principles in celestial mechanics, including the law of gravitation, must come into question if the sun possesses a charge sufficient to influence the planet in their orbits or comets in theirs. In the Newtonian celestial mechanics, based on the theory of gravitation, electricity and magnetism play no role. Immanuel Velikovsky, New York, 1950.
Book, and there's going to be multiple videos to it. The next is surprising creation of the Hebrew alphabet, the first physical evidence of a highly advanced previous civilization. Why did I put it after theory of multidimensional reality? It's real simple. That's the model that explains how matter comes into this dimension. This is the information dimension. These spikes are Planck's constant. This is Planck's time, and Planck's distance, I guess, would be as it goes along. That's what it is. So when I saw it, I knew exactly what it was. See this line here? It's a modified square wave, like digital. When you plot this, you realize this is an atom coming into this dimension. This is the atom as it spins in a toroid direction. This waveform is nothing more than this as it wraps around, as a ball turns around 360 degrees and goes in this pattern. This is what it looks like. 22 views of this waveform is the Hebrew alphabet. You got it? Moses said when he dumped the tables out of the hill, it was actually in the cave, not from on top. I have the advantage of knowing that because I found the hill, remember? He said it was the words of God and the writing of God. Well, he's not lying to you. He didn't create the design of the letters, and he didn't do the sequence of symbols on those tablets. So this is what it will cover. The formation of the letters. I don't know if I'll do all 22. I don't know if that'll fit in one session, but you'll clearly see it. I had to create that 3D model, and I had to also build one. This is what I had to build in order to get the whole thing. This is one of the shapes. Recognize it? Now hold it like this better. See that? Yeah, that's the origin of the heart shape. Now you know where it came from. The same thing is true for the Star of David and the Mandela. It all has to do with that alphabet. Then you convert the letters, the views you're looking at that. This thing is really vectors. Then you convert the vectors to planes. You recognize the form, then the thing to the planes, and you see recognizable forms. You substitute the letters in the Torah for the planes, and you start to see and understand what this thing really is. You'll understand also why Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah, explains what Moses really pulled out of the cave, and then finally explains what the Torah actually is. And that will surprise you, but you'll understand why it's holy, but it's also the remnant of an extremely highly advanced previous civilization, most likely tens of millions of years more advanced than us. The reason why Moses puts the Garden of Eden story in there, he's telling us the people who put this technology in that cave. Next book, this is the one I did in, I think, 96. And, oh, by the way, the other one, the Library of Congress indexed it QA 76.889. That's quantum computing.
Wanted to get caught up on the comments. I promised a comment show after the 3 that I just did. Christmas has just been crazy for me. I haven't really been able to even touch my computer that much. The first comment that come through on the very first video was Anaxagoras Aristarchus. This is from Shanriha. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Oh, I can't highlight it, can I? Thunderbolts Project just released a vid talking about a new finding that the water on Earth is very similar to the water on Saturn's ring, which unsurprisingly is an alien concept for the mainstream pseudoscientists who predicted that they'd be vastly different because of where they believed the two planets formed. Another tick for Velikovsky in the Thunderbolts piece. Oh, absolutely. I agree 100%. If you want, throw a link on there. Shanna Living Waters responded to that. I do know I have heard this hypothesis before. How in the world can they get a sample of Saturn's rings to determine they have salt water? I assumed that there'd be a few ways to ascertain that. And then, of course, there was the Cassini probe that was there for quite a while. But I'd watch the Thunderbolts video, probably be more telling. Falls in the face of the flat earther and also many other teachings that the planets as a solid body don't exist. I myself am not convinced of flat earth, but I am reading a book about Sir Hubert, the U.S. Navy, called World Beyond the Poles, and I have found on Library of Congress that claims an infinite flat earth and multiple worlds in a different space on Earth exist. It's not a fiction. They claim it was an absolutely true event. And she's got the link there. You know, if I have to go back to whether the Earth was flat or not, then I'd have to start all over again. And I'm just going to go with the round Earth scenario. I look at the planets through a telescope, and they look like round bodies to me. It doesn't improve our lives one way or the other. So that's why I don't even bother with the flat earthers. If we have to go back to deciding whether the Earth is round or flat, then we're starting at square one again. And I don't think we have to do that. There's lots of theories out there, and they can all make a very compelling case. But there's some things you just know. Getting into that argument is just a quagmire. How can you really prove anything? That's why the Skeptic Society was so big in the 16th and 17th centuries. You can't prove anything beyond the shadow of a doubt. There's some people who say that we're not even really here right now. Well, if you're going to go back to doing that, then you're starting at square one. I have a secret theory that it's mainstream that maintains that whole thing so that they can lead people astray and fragment our learning ability from materials provided on the internet. People know something's wrong, but they don't know what it is, and this gives them that avenue. I think the Earth is a globe. My son was pointing out to me that, did you ever notice the similarity in the word democracy and demon, or in democracy? It's like this malevolent force is reaching in and trying to take away all of our King Arthurs. I thought that was a remarkable comment. I have to credit him for that one. Electric Universe Eyes. It's painting 3 pictures for me. The Earth first belonged under the immovable pole star Saturn. Then after the configuration broke up, the Earth was somewhere in between the Sun and Saturn, the Earth's perception appearing to be at the center. Then Earth finally was captured and then orbited around the Sun. It's pretty good. You gotta put Jupiter in there too, because Jupiter was Sun for a while. A good video to watch is the Jupiter myth. Sheared sheep solar eclipses prove there is no parallax in the orbit of the Sun and Moon. You left a link. I'll have to check that out. Slightly slanted sleuth for the truth. Or maybe the only begotten is where the portal of Sol leads. It's all there. Has nothing to do with Saturn or Jupiter, though the only begotten is the one after the zero meaning. But anyway, the Barnard's Loop is the residue or trail that when followed leads straight to Earth. It's the Earth system birthplace. Fibonacci, starting in the eye of Providence, the eye that never sleeps nor slumbers, the eye in the tent. Well, it's a little cryptic for me, but I left a comment to it, so I'm trying to ascertain that comment. It's just a tad cryptic. Slightly slanted, look for the truth again. Do you have an email? Yes, I provided it. Although I don't want emails, because I barely get to it as it is. I'm not real good with my email, but I have to start learning how to be better. Greg J., the only begotten sun is in the trapezium, open star cluster, which by coincidence, not the stars within. from across 5 and all 2 at the top of cross is a binary. The kicker is in November of 2012, NASA announced the discovery of an intermediate black hole being in the middle of the cluster and published an article in space.com on black holes. I don't think they exist. There are more, but first the cross with circle is. Circle with cross in the middle is Earth's alchemy symbol. When the cross and circle combine, I don't know. But these stars are designed as 010101. To shorten this explanation, I'll add that everything in my Redshift app has a distance in the info. This trapezium open star cluster does not. Now the great nebula angular size, etc., is 66 times 60. From an esoteric perspective, it's very hard to grasp without any understanding of alchemy or Hermetic teaching. Juicer should get it. The eye is to the triangle, as is the king's chamber is to the pyramid. Pyramid equals fire and mid. The pyramid is to Egypt, as is Egypt to the earth, Egypt being the geological center of the earth. Now, when study brings your mind's eye to the cosmic and sees the trapezium is to the nebula, as the nebula is to Orion, or the stars
Scythe, Alnitak, and Rigel, which form the same degree angle equilateral triangle as the Great Pyramid, so the eye in the triangle is the trapezium in that triangle equals Tether Egypt in center of Earth is Malkuth.
Groovy.
I'll have to study that a little bit. Okay, Kilo Whiskey Alpha. Jay, your search for truth is admirable. Divinity is like that, scrabbling around in the contrived confusion for the illuminating lightning bolt. There are imposters that are quite willing and able to throw them around as well. That is the game in this reality, to find your way back. It's so obvious, really. You will know when you are there and when you are on your way for the ease it provides. Our friend Plato traveled the known world searching for his ease and probably found it amongst the mystics of Persia. I was thinking Tibet. You and your followers will not now have to leave your seats. That's progress. Paradura ad astra. Okay. I absolutely love our history as a species. From Hermit Nick, Yuri Gressel, yay new vid. Aristarchus, from Ed Upside Down Head. Aristarchus is an anagram for
Christ's aura.
Christ aura. Wide Awake said, I like this one very much and look forward to the next one. Well, thank you. I threw my TV out the window a couple years ago. Not literally, metaphorically. And Bollinger, for us to even circle or revolve around the sun would have to be a stationary object in the sky. From perspective, we can't even see a planet or any star move with our naked eyes, but if you see the velocity of the sun, then you would see it in front of you, like the head of a comet and all the planets being tailed. The sun is dragging the planets through the galaxy, and that's why we never hit the sun, but we're constantly falling toward it. And this is kind of a vortex, so you see where the vortices theory of Descartes is so interesting. Vortex, or the spiral pattern, is very prominent in the universe. I have no reason to doubt it. I really haven't looked at many arguments to the contrary, to be honest about it. That we orbit in, like the planets in the solar system. However, the Newtonian law for the solar system doesn't hold up for the galaxy. The outside turns just as fast as the inside, which is why they created dark matter. You, like the head of a comet, and all the planets is very prominent in the universe. I have no reason to doubt it. I really haven't looked at many arguments to the contrary, to be honest about it. That we orbit in, like the planets in the solar system. However, the Newtonian law for the solar system doesn't hold up for the galaxy. The outside turns just as fast as the inside, which is why they created dark matter, if I'm not mistaken.
All of us, whether or not we served in uniform, are veterans of a war in which freedom and free government are at stake. Such fullness of knowledge is the direct function of education. Most of us work hard to provide our homes with every possible comfort for our children. We safeguard. We strive to set before them good examples of moral living, of manners and deportment. Possibly, we even pamper them. Yet complacently, even carelessly, we commit our children to schools of which we know but little. we cannot meet the complexities of modern life with outmoded school systems. We must keep our educational standards abreast of the swift-moving times in which we live, if we hope to preserve our national heritage and our American way of life, the American way.
When I was director of the National Observatory 20 years ago, there was a very well-known astronomer now. In fact, she's just won the Cosmology Prize. That's Vera Rubin. She was carrying out a program at Kitt Peak at the National Observatory of observing faint spiral galaxies with a view to looking to their redshift distribution, their velocity distribution. And this was a program that everybody thought was a good program. And so she'd been given observing time, and at the end of about a year, she had completed about a third of her program. And so she actually wrote a little paper pointing out that she was getting results very different from the ones that were expected. And we had our usual meeting. And when we got to her program, which was an ongoing program, so people just looked it over, the leading extragalactic astronomer on my committee of that day immediately said, well, look, she's getting this result. It doesn't fit. It has to be wrong. I recommend that we stop the program. That was his position. And what was interesting to me was I sat there and listened to this discussion. And the majority of the people, because of his level of knowledge and authority, went along with him. So the recommendation of the committee was that we stop the program. Well, I had the last word, so I ignored it. But most people don't. And the peer review system and NASA itself, which is very conformist, will always do just that. That's one of the reasons why the road ahead is hammered out. As Hoyle said, anytime you point a new telescope at the sky now, you're only going to find what you already know is up there.
In the cosmology quest, Burbage refers to Vera Rubin's work on dark matter. In this piece where he's talking that she was working on a project and getting results that they didn't like or that weren't expected, and the head astronomer wanted to nix the project, but Burbage had the last word and he overruled it. I wonder if dark matter is the result of that encounter. They didn't say it was or not. That makes me a bit curious. Were they trying to put a muzzle on that, but they couldn't, so they had to come up with that dark matter idea real quick? Try to stay away from anything that has to do with race, religion, or politics. Just kind of leave that out of the picture because I value my YouTube account. So apologies if I don't read your comment. It's there. I left you a link for consideration. Mockingbird Lane. You used to have 1313, didn't you? Said Voltaire is a beautiful soul. I read and reread his short book, Miracles in Idolatry. Religiously, courage, intelligence, heart, all three are needed to see honestly and to be your real self, according to L. Frank Baum. Voltaire possessed all traits, to be sure, and as to heart, his was close to Christ. His interest in Newton must have been founded on such alchemy. Well, you know, I don't know why Voltaire would have gotten behind Newton, and I think he was a little pissed off at France, to make an understatement. Peter Howard, this would be a perfect time for the family or estate of the great man to consider republishing. I would love to have him in my library. If you're referring to Velikovsky, I agree. To be honest with you, I'm so busy delving into his works, I just bought 2 of his books, Ages in Chaos and Peoples of the Sea, that I don't know what the current situation of books he has in print are or aren't. Every man is guilty of the good he didn't do. Take that, everyone's conscience. That's why I posted it. I thought it was one of them comments that pretty much says it all, doesn't it? Why do women get off so easy? I don't know, Michael. Because they have 3 guys rotating around them at all times, waiting to swoop in. But that might not be a good statement to make. Just in case some women don't get the joke. You may not want the fact that you like this to appear here. Oh, I get it. I know you're just being funny in a serious kind of way. Or serious in a funny kind of way. Or just funny. I have just watched all your presentation. As I am a big fan of Velikovsky, it's wonderful that you are reading all his writings. And you have a great voice for doing it. Keep getting better and more interesting. Keep up the good work. Gator 8287. Thank you, Gator. People gotta know
They gotta know this stuff. I love Velikovsky. He's my hero. Tesla. Richard Graham, Tesla, genius, was a threat to the emerging cabal, i.e. free energy, fact that, and now. Tesla, some people don't regard him as a scientist, but rather an inventor, or as he referred to himself, as a discoverer. But, come on. The guy took nature's fury and brought it to us, into our homes. That's just, I'm still astounded to think of how he could have worked all that out in his head. He just did it, Damn the torpedoes. He just did it. And today, we still enjoy him. He was 100 years ahead of his time at least. Jack F. said, great work, Greg. Do you have a website with your email on it? I believe you can access that through my profile. I do have an email. As far as having a website, I'm looking into getting one now. Some folks have emailed me, so if there is a way, I'll have to make sure. Like I said before, I'm not real good with my email. I gotta get better. Damn, we are getting spoiled, Lone Ronin said. Lisa Hauserman. Greg, I always enjoy your videos when I get to listen. Thank you for all you do. You're welcome, Lisa. My buddy Bipolatelli, the Einstein effect. Yeah, no doubt. It has lasting effects. I see you on a lot of videos commenting, but I'm muted from most of them, so I can't reply. I don't know. It must be my glowing personality. Richards Graham says more. All right, Graham, you got it. Kronos, my buddy. Awesome. Richards Graham, to do under the cover of anonymity and on a need-to-know basis only, is how for centuries, info, science, history, technology is hidden from humanity and rewritten. We're using their resources to assist with our demise, while a club of clubs, including club that controls, almost by proxy, everything, even using thought-influencing methods. Absolutely. I think it's vulgarly offensive, isn't it? Greg, your thoughts on the moon's recent wobble? Well, I haven't been keeping up with current events because I've been studying the past so much, so I don't know that much about it. I will look into it. That's Jersey Dolphins. Rodney Stillwell, great as always, my brother. I love your stuff. Thank you. I love how you are laid back and explain stuff so simple. My son is 10 and listens to it too. I'm not sure how much he gets, but he loves it. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Same to you, my friend. And I'm glad that your son is into it. I try to get my son to pay attention to it, and he avoids it like the plague. Rodney Stillwell. Oh, by the way, thanks for 2 videos in a day. Must be Christmas. Love your stuff. You're welcome, Rodney. And I try to get them out at least a couple of months. Science is chained down by dogma. You got that right. That's Bohab Destructo. Science is chained down by dogma. If I could, I would chain dogma to the bumper of karma and then take a road trip to Wally World. I would also punch that Moose Edison in the bleep because that's what he is, a bleep.
Sorry, folks, we're closed for 2 weeks to clean and repair America's favorite family fun park. Sorry.
What? Yeah, I know. But you know what? Listening to Eric Dollard, Edison, when he was a young man, he wasn't like he was when he was older. He was kind of an ass kicker and a name taker. Dollard goes into some of the things that he accomplished, and especially with the light bulb. They had an arcing electric light, but it was really noisy, and they wanted to put it into a bulb, right? Well, he went through at least 10,000 different things trying to find the right element, and he was messing around with a bamboo fan. Eric Dollard tells the story. It's really interesting. Edison I think he's another one of them guys who started believing in his own legend. As Keith Richards says, image casts a long shadow.
On the other hand, when placed at their observed distances, that is, in the neighborhood of nearby galaxies, their brightness and energies become normal, and no special mechanisms need to be evoked. This problem has led many astronomers to abandon the idea that all redshifts are due to their speed of recession away from the Earth. And if this is true, then there is no need for an expanding universe, and the Big Bang never happened.
There is still much on the agenda to discuss,
the situation in Mars being one of them. Some future news, like I'm going to be having a conversation with Ted Holden, and that should be interesting. A lot more Velikovsky coming, and Electric Universe, and our messed up history. Velikovsky teaches us an essential element to all study and scholarship, research. And that is, it must be interdisciplinary. It has to line up with every department, and only through empirical observation can we begin to decipher this crazy universe we live in, achieve any kind of a good answer for something. I think one thing that a lot of us have in common is that we don't have anywhere to talk about this at. People that are at work or at the store or your friends, they all believe that Einstein was the smartest man that was ever born and they got it all figured out. And then they just, anything that's outside of that little path, they just look at like you're nuts. We know better. And that's, personally, I can't stress enough how important it is for the researchers to find out about Halton art, for people to know about Immanuel Velikovsky, because that just changes the whole picture. I mean, how many times have you gone to a video and you got all settled in and then they start talking about black holes and neutron stars? It just makes it not even worth watching. It could very well be electricity, or maybe Velikovsky. That's why it's so important. I think we all, in our own little way, are coming to the conclusion or finding out that not only was there a very advanced high-tech civilization living on Earth, but they were giants as well and lived much, much longer than we do, and differently. Sounds dreamy. Just think of the technology that would be involved in a civilization that could move something like the moon in its place. That theory does exist, that the moon was parked there. I used to think things were just ridiculous beyond belief until just a few years ago when I started to try to find out what happened. Everything just kind of fell apart like a house of cards. And then you decide to take a look over here in this area. Yep, sure enough, that's messed up too. As a matter of fact, everything is messed up. Then you remember what the CIA said. We know that we will have achieved our goals when everything the American public believes is false. With the results of any cycles beyond 12 to 30,000 years, you can't go by that, because the evidence of the last nova was most likely from Saturn.
Man's confidence in God. And therefore, the Western world needed a new source of confidence, which was given to it by Newton. That is to say, Newton's depiction of a clockwork universe, which has been wound up by God, presumably. He may not be here now checking on it. Maybe he has other universes or other clocks to wind up. But the world will run like a perfect clock, and gravitation replaces God as the basis for certainty in the stability of the universe. The entire universe is connected by gravity. It is a perfect clock. Nothing has ever gone wrong from the moment of creation, and nothing ever will go wrong. So, the Newtonian clockwork universe is designed to create within us the feeling, or shall I say the illusion, of cosmic stability, in the same way that medieval Christianity's emphasis upon a God-centered world was, and in the same way that Aristotle's emphasis upon the logic of man and his concept that things are eternal and never change was. Now, we can see then that the main intention of Western thought from 500 BC to 2000 or 1900 AD all has the same intent. It is a collective, neurotic reaction on the part of Western culture to provide ourselves with a system of thought which makes us believe that the world is stable because we refuse to acknowledge that the world can be unstable. The East acknowledges it, and therefore the East has had no reason to produce the kind of systems of thought and the kind of endeavors like science and art that we produce. We must do it because we refuse to acknowledge the possibility of catastrophism, and therefore everything we do is a hysterical desire to put this thought out of our mind. Now in the 20th century, with the advent of relativism in physics and various kinds of revolt in philosophy and a whole attempt at destruction of the solidity of feeling in music, in painting, in art, in literature, and in drama, we are in a period of crisis where a new synthesis has not emerged. But when it will emerge, I think I can predict with some degree of confidence that its intention will be the same. Whatever synthesis emerges out of the destruction of ideas in the 20th century, it'll emerge in the next century. That synthesis will have the same purpose. It will provide us with a feeling that the Earth is stable and safe. Now, I'm not using Einstein's name merely to give some kind of spurious or cheap credibility to Velikovsky. That's not the point. I think what must be understood is that they engaged in a serious, rational, civilized debate about the electromagnetic properties of the universe. At the time, Velikovsky said certain things existed, which Einstein doubted. After a time when certain things appeared, notably the electromagnetic magnetosphere of Jupiter, Einstein became more convinced that Velikovsky might be correct. And I think that the discussion between them centered about the possibility of whether or not Velikovsky's argument about catastrophism had a basis in the structure of the cosmos. And it would appear that towards the end of his life, Einstein had developed at least a tolerant attitude towards what Velikovsky said. And had he lived longer, there is the feeling that he might have been able to arrange for certain experiments which would have verified or not verified the basic hypotheses which are central to Velikovsky's argument. I think that is the nature of the discussion between them, that Einstein took Velikovsky seriously, looked at his propositions seriously, and kept an open mind about what Velikovsky was saying. This is the extent of the relationship between them. I think that is the important thing to understand. Have a look at the scenery behind me and ask yourself if this could have occurred peacefully and slowly over a couple of billion years, or do you think it happened all at once?
I just wanted to say Happy New Year's to everybody. Be safe out there tonight. It's amateur night. If you're going out, I'll have part 2 out by next year. My bottle of Jameson. Just me and Jameson. I'm staying home tonight and my life is rated G. Unfortunately, but that's alright. It's still a gas. The people have spoken. Greg J Channel, where you have a say. Hey, that's pretty good. Oh my God. Even though it's really just another day, there will never be another New Year's Eve 2018. So love that loved one a little bit more and soak it up like a sponge. All love and glory is fleeting because the wolf is always at the door. Take care. Hey, that wasn't bad. But I'm starting to fall out. I'm getting tired. I've been getting tired. What's this? Oh my God.
Stanford.
I don't know. Almost did it again. There. Those videos come fast, man. You gotta be ready. If you don't, they get you. Oh well, let's pop in on everyone. I think I'm gonna have to say goodnight. I'm just tired, and I gotta drive my kids to their moms later. And it's a cruise, so I'm gonna probably say goodnight
And I had a great time, like always. Hey, there's St. Pauli girl. Michael Rutledge. Grouch, man. Hey, buddy. Come and saying hello. Alchemy is still here. See, your color is purple, and that reminds me of amethyst. I like that stone. I got a nice amethyst amulet. It's a donut shape. Ah, man, I'm tired. I'm trying. My eyes are closing.
Well, open your eyes. What's going on?
I'm tired, man.
Ah, gee, story of our life.
Yeah.
Hey?
Well, we went.
Hey, Paulie.
We went for 8 hours.
Paulie, why are you there?
Good.
Paulie, why are you there? We are the top of the food chain. There's nothing we can't kill. There's nothing really we can't eat. Have a look at the chat, Rick.
Nah.
We can't. You tell me something we can't make edible.
Poop?
Yes, we can.
Oh.
Just got to treat it right.
Oh, that's disgusting.
And that's not really food, is it?
No. Grass.
No.
Grass.
We can eat it.
Yeah.
We can eat it.
Bark.
Well, what do you think vegetarians eat?
Yeah. Yeah, they eat plants.
Yeah, grass.
Yeah. Yeah, so how you doing tonight? Everything okay?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
I'll stay over there, was it?
I'm just falling out, you know. I mean, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. No. I'm gonna probably log. You know, we've had a good long show. You know.
I listened to most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still got to get caught up in last week's shows. So yeah, I got one to release though.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one here, you know. But yeah, I'm gonna probably. I just wanted to look where I was doing the scientist there, and I thought I had something more extensive on Tesla, but apparently I don't.
Okay.
Let me see. It won't take long. I gotta get there. I'm doing 50 videos. I think I got 7 pages. That's pretty good. That's not too shabby.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, here. We just watched this one. Yeah, I have there's one more. Quasars, redshift, nebula disk. Yeah, I guess we can wait until next week. And then there's Mars, Tad. And then there's that one video, Ganymede, human origins in the Ganymede theory. It's a pretty good video. It's got quite a few people to watch it. 23,000.
Yep.
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 Yeah, well, I guess I'm going to have to say goodbye to everyone.
All right. Catch you later, Greg.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
I'm going to do what you're going to do.
What? Crash?
Crash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll go get it.
What time? It's like it's like 7 o'clock at night. Yeah.
Yep. But I'm going to get out of bed at 2:30 a.m.
Oh, that's right, because you got to work on the train. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Seeing that train cruising down the tracks like that, man. You'd think
One day when you're bad, I'll show you the view into Melbourne. Off the
you'd
top
think
of the hill.
it'd be dangerous.
No.
No, it's not. Oh man, you know, I started writing my dreams down. I wanted to tell Polly Girl this, I forgot. You know, by reading that, Channeling the Higher Self, I thought, you know, I'm into my dreams, you know. So I never did it before, but I finally wrote a dream down, and I lost half of it, but it's really goofy, man.
Oh, here it is. You gonna read it?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's really weird, but I think Well, it might have been two dreams meshed into one, but it could have just been one. Anyways, here it goes. I was running down a hill with a giant movie screen in front of me at the bottom of the hill. It was, I don't know, some kind of a new game. There was like a controller you held in your hand, but that controlled the screen. Okay, there were also people in another room where it looked like they were either grieving or worshiping, but it was like a racquetball court. And there was someone sent me a matchbook through the air and said, it looked like a matchbook and said my money was working for me. Before the street hill and screen, there was what looked to be a motel and a car with someone in it. I think it was a female. The car, it just left, and everything was bright, like red. And then, the next thing I know, I'm on the roof of a really high building. The long cement roof that people were walking back and forth on. And I was in the old neighborhood that I grew up in, walking down the street past my old house. And I woke up.
How old do you think you were?
In my 30s, maybe.
You actually, okay, all right.
I wasn't old, like, as old as I am now, but I wasn't a kid either. I'm thinking I was somewhere in the middle.
Because if I ask that question, most people say I don't know. I didn't feel like any age. Like
yeah, I'm just trying to think about how I felt. I didn't feel any particular age, but if I had to guess, I'd say 30s.
Did you could you watch yourself in your dream? Do you ever watch yourself?
No, well, occasionally, yeah, in the third person.
Actually, in your dream,
Mm-hmm.
you see yourself watching yourself.
Not very often.
Oh, okay.
When I fly, yeah.
I've done that.
Well, I can fly because I know I'm dreaming. It's all you got to do is you just got to know you're dreaming.
Flying dreams aren't they the best though?
Yeah.
When you wake up, you're like oh, that was just the most awesome thing.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because flying, you have total control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a flying dream, it's subconscious. It's your subconscious way of keeping you from completely losing it.
Yeah.
Because flying dreams are a result of you in your conscious state, waking time, where you feel like you have no control. Like everything's out of your control. Like you can't, you have no way of, like, everything depends on what somebody else does. If somebody else does this wrong, then it's going to come down on you. Like, what I'm saying? Like, you have no control over what's going to happen in your life, and from getting despondent, you have flying dreams, which make you feel really special and wonderful when you wake up.
Well, I just remembered bits and pieces. I wanted to remember more, but I just couldn't.
I know the colors, because those are the main things you remembered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the color red.
Yeah, bright red.
There was a girl in a car, and you saw her drive away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you don't know. Maybe you didn't recognize her, but
no.
Did you feel like she was somebody that you knew?
Yeah, but I don't know who it was. It was. I'm pretty sure it was a woman. Yeah, but I don't know who it was, and I don't.
And she had a fast car.
I forgot more than I remembered.
Were you by? Wait a minute. At the beginning, you said some.
I was running down a hill. There was
running down a
giant movie screen at the bottom. Yeah, and I had a controller that controlled something on the screen.
And why would somebody give you a matchbook?
Right? He sent it to me, flying.
He sent it to you.
He let it go. He goes, "Your money's working for you."
What does that mean?
I don't.
No, there's plenty of websites where they can they have interpreter like software where you can punch in the main things of your dream and will give you an interpretation. There's plenty of those. There are plenty of them, and it's free. You can just punch in the keywords of your dream, and it comes up with an interpretation.
I will. I'll do that. This is the first time I ever wrote a dream down in my whole life. So, I mean, I'm going to start doing it,
It's interesting. I mean, I made the mistake of telling myself I wanted to remember my dreams, and
yeah.
and I kept telling myself, and before I went to sleep, it took 21 days before I actually did. But I mean, before I went to sleep, I want to remember my dreams, and then that's that. And once 21 days came and went, boy, did I remember my dreams.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, I didn't. It's like, okay, I don't need to remember all this. So I don't want to remember all this.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I come to find out, hey, guess what? Most of my dreams are bad. They're very. I rarely have a dream where I wake up with a smile on my face or even feel good at all. I feel most of my dreams are just, just not like horror, not that kind of like, scary, like a horror movie, but very emotional and without any way of getting any kind of closure. And it's just, I hate them. I hate sleeping.
Really?
I hate it. Yep.
Yeah.
And
it's a mixed bag for me.
I mean, if I'm really, really tired, yeah, then I'll go to sleep and I just won't remember. I mean, I know I'm still dreaming, but I won't remember.
That's what I'm longing.
Yeah,
to
but
do
you wake
right
up
now.
often out of that, Paul. You wake up when you sleep like that, often feeling like you had a big hangover.
Yeah.
Guys, I hate
When you're a zombie, when you crash right out real hard.
Yeah, that's true.
I hate to be a party pooper, but I'm falling asleep.
Well, it's
All right,
about.
Greg. Catch you next time.
Hey, man,
Yeah,
I had a
that's
great.
fine.
Yes.
Ted.
Hey, we'll talk more next week. I'm into this, but I'm freaking falling asleep.
How about if we start earlier?
Okay. Well,
Like-
I'll try to hang in there for a little while longer.
But I mean, let's start earlier next Saturday. Don't start so late.
Yeah, okay. We
If
can
it's
do that.
possible.
Yeah, like
to start.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it.
Give
anyway.
yourself a chance. Yeah, give yourself a chance,
Yeah,
young
yeah,
fella.
yeah.